Hey there, good afternoon, and welcome to The Way Forward. I'm Eddie Francis. This is the second episode of The Way Forward, our maiden voyage happening on Saturday, December 14th. Had a good time doing that show. I was nervous. I was really nervous. So let me tell you the story here. I have been wanting to do a radio show for about maybe 20 years, more than 20 years. And finally, the good folks at WBOK, they decided that they're going to take a chance on your boy. And so we get this show together. I'm ready for this thing. I'm so ready for it that I refer to my alma mater, Loyola University of New Orleans, as Loyola High School at one point. My brain was completely gone, ready to kick this show off. But thank you so much. If you hung out with me for that first episode of The Way Forward, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the fact that you are here with me right now. So this episode of The Way Forward is pre-recorded. We are not live in studio right now. If you're seeing the video of this, then you will see that I'm in the cozy confines of Chez Francois in my home office, the home studio. And I cleaned up really good. I actually did a really good job. At least I did a good job with what is in the frame of the shot. Now, whatever's outside of the shot, I cannot make you any promises that it looks decent at all. No promises. By the way, the first guest on The Way Forward, Dr. Gregory Price, who professor of economics at the University of New Orleans, and we did economy 101 just to give folks an idea of what happens in the economy, why we pay what we pay for things. And the conversation got really cool. So if you did not get a chance to check out this show live last week, then you can go online. And you can check out the replay actually on Facebook as well as YouTube. So make sure you go to WBOK 1230 on YouTube and Facebook, and you can check out that episode. And so I want to remind you of why we're doing this show. This show is about solutions. Now, it's true that a radio show is not necessarily going to solve all the problems. We know this. But what we can do is we can put something on the table to give you the tools, or at least give you a foundation to understand why we have what we have going on in society. It could be issues related. It could be everyday stuff related. For example, again, first episode about the economy. I was just really curious about why things cost what they cost. Why do we pay what we pay? Why did people make so much of what we're paying for stuff in the economy? How is it impacted by presidencies, or how is it impacted by politics? And so the charge in that interview was to get an understanding so that you, the everyday person, can educate yourself even more so on how the economy works, or however something works, and then move forward and make your own decisions, informed decisions for yourself. And that's what the way forward is about. The way forward is about figuring out why something is the way it is, why there might be this social issue, why we might have this phenomenon going on in our world or our society or our community. Why do our bodies do a certain thing? Why do our brains do a certain thing? Why are things the way they are with the sports world, the entertainment world, the media world? And how you can make a decision for yourself to make your world better, or the world of the people around you. Which I want to stress that I think it would be great that a result of one of these episodes, or just this show overall, would be for people to figure out how to work better together for a better society. And so this next hour is dedicated to a solution, or at least understanding a problem, and how we can move forward as a community, and how we can move forward also as individuals. We're going to talk about how to address these issues, And it's going to be a wide range of things throughout this show. Throughout the show, you're going to hear about politics. You're going to hear about education. You're going to hear about business. And again, it could even be something from media, entertainment, sports, whatever. It could be health and wellness. And so tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to hang out on the way forward. Go to WBOK 1230. You can listen, of course, on your radio dial, 1230 a.m. You can stream it. WBOK1230.com is the website. You can also hang out with us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch if you're on Twitch. Or you can hang out with me individually. I love to have conversations with folks. I'm active on social media, Eddie Francis 06 on Threads and Blue Sky. You'll see me in the comments of The Way Forward, but search me on Facebook, Eddie Francis Unscripted, and I would love to hear from you. As a matter of fact, even if you have a suggestion for a topic, I would love to hear that. But I have a rule. And the rule is that we're not going to spend an hour living on what's wrong with the topic or the people. What we're going to do is we're going to put that on the table, what the problem is. But the rule is that it has to be something where we are actively looking for a solution to that issue. Thank you and please. Now, when you go on social media and you have anything that you want to discuss with The Way Forward, then use the hashtag The Way Forward WBOK. You'll see that on Facebook, The Way Forward WBOK. I've started using that hashtag as well on Threads and Blue Sky. And so this week, we're going to talk to someone who is way cool, someone I really, really enjoyed working with during my days at Dillard University, where I served as the Director of Communications and Marketing once upon a time. Dr. Robert Collins. Dr. Robert Collins is a professor of urban studies and public policy. And so we're going to talk public policy 101. What is it? We hear about it. How do people get involved? What do people do when it comes to public policy? How does it shape up? What do politicians have to do with public policy? What do political parties have to do with public policy? What are the political parties' philosophies? We're going to find out all of that stuff from Dr. Robert Collins. Can't wait for that interview. He's someone whose work I have long enjoyed, especially when I got to Dillard and I got the opportunity to hang out with him. And once again, if you did miss last week's conversation with Dr. Gregory Price about understanding the economy, then that is available on Facebook, YouTube, and I do believe that the video is still available on Twitch. Now, you might have noticed the theme already here. Dr. Gregory Price, Dr. Robert Collins. I'm going to do what I can to go out and get credible voices, people who understand issues very well. No, they don't have to have a doctorate. That just happened to be the lineup for the first couple of weeks. But these are folks, I have to say, I'm one of those people who places a very high value, not only on higher education, but I place a very high value on the people in higher education. And let me tell you why. The reason I place such a high value there is in higher education, this is where a lot of folks are able to put a lot of things together to understand some of society's most important and pressing issues. This is where you have the people doing the deep research. A lot of times when we hear about what's happening in the media, it's because someone who has received their training on a college campus has already done a lot of the hard work, the footwork, to actually give that issue some shape. And so you will hear me punt a lot of times to folks in higher education to get their perspectives. And by the way, we say this all the time. Why don't they ask somebody who really understands this issue? Well, that's what I'm attempting to do. I'm attempting to go out and find people who really, really understand the issue so that you and I can understand how to carry the ball from here. Again, they're not all going to have doctor in front of their names, but these are going to be people who I would like to think are credible voices. Now, to get the way forward kicked off, there's a segment that I want to do. Started it last week, of course, with the first show. And I'm going to continue that segment. And the segment is called What's Good? It's important to me to set a tone here. And the tone that I want to set is that we are going to collect good news. It may not be news that's going to make your heart go a flutter, but it is news that's going to make you say, oh, okay, something good is happening out there. People are trying to do something. There is something to wake up and smile about every day. And so I believe that the What's Good segment is a really important segment for the way forward. Again, if you have anything that you want to share, and you may want to share some good news with me, a good feel good story, then you can use the hashtag the way forward WBOK when you post it on your social media accounts. If you want to mention me, please do that. I'm on Instagram as well, by the way, Eddie Francis 06 there, and you can use the way forward hashtag there. But what's good? Here's what's good. So first piece of news I got for you is from one of our local papers, the Data News Weekly, one of our local Black papers. New Orleans is leading the nation in the declining of violent crime rates, reports Data News. That's despite news of deadly incidents in recent weekends. The murder rate is down near the 50-year low of 121, and that was recorded in 2019, again, according to Data News Weekly. From another esteemed Black newspaper here in New Orleans, the Louisiana Weekly, the Environmental Protection Agency announced in November that it would allocate over $40 million for Louisiana under the Biden-Harris administration's bipartisan infrastructure law to improve water infrastructure. The funding is part of a 5-year, $50 billion investment in water infrastructure, the largest such investment in American history. The bipartisan infrastructure law mandates that a majority of announced funds go to disadvantaged communities in the form of grants or loans. The funds will be dispersed through the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds, a federal state water investment partnership. According to the EPA's Office of Water, the funds can be used for a wide range of projects. By the way, Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans is among the groups receiving funding. From the city of New Orleans, the Office of Nighttime Economy, in partnership with the Ella Project and the New Orleans Public Library, has launched a series of free music census sessions. The year-long series will consist of professional development workshops, roundtables, and networking events for the New Orleans music community. The program focuses on equipping local musicians and music professionals with actionable business and industry skills to build, grow, and sustain their careers. In-person sessions will also feature virtual options when available. The first session begins January 2025. Registration is now open. For session topics and information, go to nolamusiccensus.org. Again, that's nolamusiccensus.org. One quick thought about this one. For years and years in New Orleans, we have said that we really want our musicians to be more business savvy. And so this is a tremendous opportunity to really lean into that. And I really hope that musicians take advantage of this opportunity. Again, that website, nolamusiccensus.org. From the University of New Orleans, UNO will offer a Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience. The new program was approved by the Louisiana Board of Regents earlier in December, and the program will serve as a pathway to medical school and other allied health programs. It will also open up opportunities for partnerships with educational institutions and healthcare providers in the neurological field. Neuroscientists focus on the brain and how it generates behavior and cognitive functions. Let's go outside of New Orleans really quickly into the HBCU world. So let me prep you for this also. And I mentioned this last week. You are going to catch me sharing a lot of good HBCU news anytime I can get good HBCU news as well. Our historically Black colleges and universities, very important to the fabric of Black America. And then also our predominantly Black institutions are also very important. So even if it's not here in New Orleans, which I will definitely share information from SUNO, Dillard, Xavier, also share information from around the state, Grambling, Southern University, Shreveport, as well as the Law Center. I want to be able to share that information with you so that we can appreciate the great things that are going on. From HBCU Buzz, Coppin State University in Baltimore has unveiled a new initiative to foster home ownership among its employees while contributing to the revitalization of West Baltimore neighborhoods. The Live Near Your Work program, developed in partnership with the city of Baltimore, offers generous financial incentives for Coppin State staff who choose to buy homes close to campus. Eligible employees can benefit from grants starting at $50,000 to help cover down payments and closing costs. The program makes special considerations to support first-time home buyers. The primary objective of the Live Near Your Work program is to encourage university employees to live near their workplaces, thereby strengthening the fabric of West Baltimore communities. And that is what's good. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Dr. Robert Collins, professor of urban studies and public policy from Dillard University, on the way forward on WBOK, what New Orleans is talking about. Welcome back to The Way Forward. I'm Eddie Francis. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure every morning you join Oliver Thomas and Dr. Ashanta Y at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the Good Morning Show. Afterwards, you got to hang out with Braylon Bryant Banks and Kemba White Dupree, 9 a.m. to noon on the front porch. Of course, those times are central. You can catch it all on WBOK 1230. Go to WBOK1230.com, Facebook, YouTube, or the Play Old app. And if you're one of those people, yes, you can even catch it on Twitch. So, what part do citizens play in shaping public policy? When our candidates don't make it to public office after we have gone through all the work of voting for these people, is it over, or is the fight just beginning, as it were for some folks? Joining us to talk about this is someone I've had the pleasure of working with during my days at Dillard University when I was a director of communications and marketing, Dr. Robert Collins. He's a Conrad and Hilton Endowed professor of urban studies and public policy at Dillard. He's a political contributor to WVUE Fox 8 and also a columnist for Verite News. Doc, it is good to see you again, my friend. How are you?
Always great to be with you, Eddie. Always great to be with you.
So let's do this as kind of a public policy 101.
Mm-hmm.
What is public policy?
Okay, so the word policy comes from the Greek root polis, which translated from Greek just means city, not the physical city, but the actual people organized as a voting administrative unit. It's the same root that we get the word politics from. It's the same root that we get the word police from. We actually get polite from that word because the polite means to act in a civilized manner and cooperate with your fellow citizens.
Oh, the
So,
irony.
yeah.
Okay.
So, public policy just means a set of rules that governs how we behave in public, or how we behave as a collective public body that is charged with governing ourselves. So that's what public policy is. It's a set of rules that we as citizens agree to behave according to in order to maintain a civil society.
That's the interesting part, the agree to behave in a certain way, because you have the Mackinac Center for Public Policy out of Michigan, and something that they wrote is many citizens and groups try to influence public policy through the political process by supporting candidates and political parties. That's a good way to make a positive impact, but not the best way. So, would you agree with that statement?
Sure, because I think what they're getting it is at is that, campaigns and elections, we think of it as the beginning of a process, but really electing a candidate to office is actually the end of the public policy process,
Hmm.
because before you get to that process, you have to win hearts and minds. The way you really change policy is not simply finding candidates that agree with you. It's actually changing the minds of the masses, because remember, politicians follow public opinion. They don't really lead it. A lot of people get that
Hmm.
confused. It's sort of like, politicians are people, and I don't mean this derogatorily, because I love politicians. They're basically my living. I was a political analyst. If they didn't exist, I wouldn't earn a living. And
Some of your
before I
best friends are
became
politicians.
before I became an academic political analyst, keep in mind I earned a living as a political PR guy. So I worked on Capitol Hill, worked for a U.S. senator in media relations. So I don't mean this derogatorily, but I'm just meaning as a process issue, it's important to keep in mind that politicians, they obviously they can influence politicians, they can influence public opinion because they're in leadership positions, they have a megaphone. But to get into office, you have to first follow public opinion. You have to see what direction public opinion is going, and then you have to jump ahead of it. So in other words, the crowd is
Mhm.
walking this way, you want to lead the crowd. The way to lead the crowd, especially at the beginning of your career, is not to stand in the corner and say, hey crowd, come this way. No, if the crowd's going that way, you got to, as a leader, you got to run out to the front. You got to get ahead of that crowd, and you say, all right, guys, this is the way we're going. You lead that crowd, you get that crowd's respect. Then you can say, okay, while we're going in this direction, I have a different idea. I want to pull us over in a different direction and see if that's better. See, and that's how politicians influence things. But before then, you have to get the respect of the voters, and the way you get the respect of the voters is that you talk to their issues. So I think what that policy center was getting at is that, the people who really want to change behaviors, they understand you have to change hearts and minds first. And the way you change hearts and minds, well, there's a couple of ways. The first way is you engage in public education campaigns, public information campaigns, to get your word out. The second way you influence behavior, or influence policy, I should say, is of course by trying to influence the legislative process through lobbying, etc. So let me just give an example. Let's say your issue, let's say your issue is the legalization of marijuana for medicinal purposes. Maybe
Mhm.
you have a relative with MS, and they need access to marijuana, et cetera. So maybe that's your issue, all right? So what you want to do is probably you want to get involved. There are a lot of organizations that are marijuana advocates, and you probably want to get involved with one of those organizations. Why? Because not only do they support candidates that support the legalization of marijuana and campaign for them and give them money for their political campaigns, et cetera, and support them, but what they do is those organizations actually engage in public information campaigns. They send speakers to speak at colleges. They do direct mail. They have a website. They go on the media. They send experts to talk, and on news stations. They send physicians to go on news programs and talk about the medicinal benefits of marijuana, because they understand that
Mhm.
before you get to the political part, you have to educate the general public. This is why marijuana should be legalized, so that that voter knows, if they come across a candidate that says, yeah, well, legalization of marijuana is one of my issues, they're gonna vote for that candidate. If they see a referendum come up on a ballot, you want them to vote in favor of that referendum. And then once those politicians get elected, Then you have the second part. All of those organizations have lobbyists, and they actually send people to testify before Capitol Hill, to testify in various state legislatures, to testify before city councils as experts into I mean, that's what
Mhm.
lobbying does. I mean, they're trying to influence the behavior of legislators once they're in office, and actually and the lobbyists actually help them write the bill, so and they save them work. So if you're trying to get a legal marijuana passed bill through a certain state legislature, what these various organizations are going to do, they actually have lawyers that are experts in drafting legislation. They're going to draft the legislation for you. They're literally going to write it
Mhm.
for you, and they're going to give it to the legislator and say, "Okay, Senator, we want you to introduce this bill on our behalf, and we'll continue to lobby." And so I think that's the issue. So it's just I'm not in any way diminishing the campaigns and election voting. We have to do that. You have to register to vote. You have to vote. People have to support candidates. You have to campaign. That's, democracy doesn't exist without that. But before you get to that point, you have to make sure you're dealing with an educated populace, with an educated
Mm.
electorate. And I think that's the problem right now. I would argue right now we don't have an educated electorate. We don't have, or at least the majority of the electorate is not really informed enough on the issues that really affect them. We look at we know. I'll just give an example. In presidential elections, we know that about and this has been true for the last 5, 6, 7 uh, election cycles. We don't really have mandate elections anymore. The last true mandate election we had, where a candidate got close to 60% of the vote, was Ronald Reagan in 1984. Ronald Reagan got 58.8% of the vote, almost 59% of the vote. Ronald Reagan could probably claim he had a mandate, right? That's a pretty, since then, it's like, elections tend to be, we have a 50-50 country, and elections tend to operate in this very small band of swing voters. So in recent elections, what we have is we have 47% of the population, roughly, or 47% of the electorate, not the population, the electorate, that are going to vote Democrat no matter what. About 47% that are going to vote Republican no matter what. And their issues are, they're locked in. They have deep seated issues. They've just voted that way their whole lives. They probably have a particular issue that they feel very strongly about, whether it's abortion or civil rights or some other issue. They're locked in. And so what happens is, and then you have maybe 1 to 2% of the population that's always going to vote for the protest candidate, for the third party candidate, just because that's their way of protesting things they don't like. And so the people that actually decide the election are about 5 to 6% of the population, that what we call the swing voters, that swing either way in every election. Now, in real terms, it's a few 100,000 people spread out amongst 5 swing states. But our study of these people shows that people think these swing voters are highly, political people that are studying polls and that are studying politics. But that's not true. These swing voters are actually the people that study politics, are the people that are locked in, the people that vote either
Mhm.
Democrat or Republican in every election. The swing voters are actually low information voters that really don't pay attention to politics at all. They don't really read much news. They don't pay attention to news. They might get a little bit of social media, but they don't get a lot of news from
Mm.
traditional
Mm.
media
Mhm.
sources. They base their vote on how they're feeling at the moment. So they don't get into ideology, or whether they like somebody's how they speak or how they look or anything like that. They vote based on how they feel at the moment. So,
That's interesting.
are you maybe I don't have a job right now. Maybe I'm mad because I haven't gotten a raise in the past 5 years, or maybe my price of gas is too high, or my price of eggs is too high. If you're mad, you're guess what? You're going to vote against the incumbent party.
So
you're just
this
going to
is
vote
yeah, this
against the
is
incumbent
exactly
party.
what we
Yeah,
just yeah, this is exactly what
yeah,
we just saw in the
yeah.
2024 election.
Exactly,
The people who
exactly.
are upset about. Okay, so we're talking to Dr. Robert Collins, professor of urban studies and public policy at Dillard University. We're kind of doing a public policy 101. So that is fascinating that the policy is actually shaped by the electorate, at least in your view, because
Mhm.
it really does seem like to me it seems like it's the other way around. With that being said, how do political party philosophies impact public policy?
Well, party philosophies impact certainly the behavior of the vast majority of the electorate. So those 47% that are either always vote Democrat or always vote Republican. Now, let me be clear that you know those people are not necessarily registered Democrat or Republican. We, in voter registration now we see, like about a third of the country is Democrat, about a third is Republican, and about a third is Independent. So a large chunk of the electorate is not registered with either political party. They're
So
registered as
these are
Independent.
these are more beliefs and behaviors than
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else. Okay.
But when we look at voting behavior, most independents, meaning registered independent, either vote Democrat or vote Republican in every election. So we classify them as independent, as Republican leaning independent, or Democrat leaning independent. Because again, most of them are still follow those voting patterns regardless of their voting registration. So party philosophies matter in the sense that probably when citizens are young, they tend to the ones that do declare a party, they most the polling shows that basically most people pick the party that their parents belong to. So if your
Hmm.
mom and dad were Democrats, you're probably going to be a Democrat. If your mom and dad are Republicans, you're probably going to be a Republican. In recent years, that has broken down a little bit. We see more young people registering as independents because they don't really like the party structure. But generally speaking, it's normally one or two or three issues that generally convince people to join a party if they're not joining a party purely because their families at party.
Hmm.
Could be abortion. Abortion is still a very strong issue. I know
Yeah.
people don't like to talk about it, but listen, there are a lot of people both on the right and the left that still vote single issue on the issue of abortion. So
Hmm. Yeah.
if you're pro-choice, you're likely to be registered as a Democrat and vote Democrat. If you're pro-life, then you're more likely to vote Republican. So that's a very strong issue. Other issues, civil rights. If if you don't believe that the current civil rights regime is robust enough, you're more likely to vote Democrat. If you think it's
Hmm.
too robust, you're more likely to vote Republican. Taxes. If you tend to believe that the current tax system should be more progressive, then you're going to tend to vote Democrat. If you believe that the current tax system, taxes the wealthy at too high of a rate, and because the wealthy are the job creators and they should get lower taxes, then you're going to tend to vote Republican.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
it's it's sort it's basic economic civil liberties issues that are probably going to determine whether you're a Democrat or Republican. But what the polling shows is that generally people decide if they're Democrat, Republican at a very early age, like around, right around the time they register to vote, 18, 19, 20. And there is some changing crossover, but very little. We're talking about less than 10% of the population. So
So,
like,
so I'm curious when it comes to policy attitudes. Where do some of the other parties, the ones that are on the fringes, where do they fit in? Libertarian, Green, Socialist, Democrat. Where
yeah.
do those other parties fit in?
Well, so a lot of those parties have either a single issue or a single set of issues that they're going to promote. Obviously, the Green Party, it's an environmental party, so they have very very strong views. That the mainstream parties would argue they have radical views on on the environment. They tend to be the main parties. Even the Democratic Party would argue the Green Party is basically anti-industry because everything that they wants to do for the environment you would have to basically shut down. Other issues that libertarians, libertarians are kind of interesting because I think a lot of people call themselves libertarians, including some people that are members of the other political parties. Like some people
Mm-hmm.
call themselves civil libertarians, which means you're in favor of for individual freedom. They call themselves
Mm-hmm.
civil libertarians. So, but a lot of people are just. I don't think people understand. True libertarians really believe in almost no government. They believe that the primary
Right.
purpose of government is to basically provide for the national defense. So they believe there should be some military, but only to protect the borders of the U.S., not to intervene in anyone else's war, not to fight
Mm-hmm.
in anyone else's war. And then they believe in some minimal law enforcement to protect the vulnerable and the weak, and that's it. So libertarians do not believe in Social Security or any or any sort of public entitlements, public
Mm-hmm.
benefit system, stuff like that. So I think a lot of these fringe parties, though, what I see them at, I mean, some of them really do believe in their issues, but I think the fringe party people, at least the ones that I've interacted with, the ones that I've talked to, the polling I've looked at, they seem more involved with just anti-establishment, and when I say anti-establishment, I don't mean anti-Republican or Democrat. I mean anti both.
Yeah.
They consider the both the Democrats and Republicans to sort of be a uniparty, and so they're opposed to existence of both of those parties because they see both of the parties as being compromised and corrupted by
Mm-hmm.
large industry, by special interests, etc. And so they don't really believe that those parties operate in the best interest of the citizens. They believe those parties operate in the best interest of the wealthy corporate elite that they believe that runs the country.
Mm-hmm.
So people that vote for those, people that vote libertarian, people that vote third party, and again, we're only talking about 1 to 2% of the population in national elections, less than that in state or local elections. What you're really talking about is you're talking about people that are basically casting a protest vote.
Yeah.
They're casting a protest vote because they're unhappy with the choices that they get from the Democrats and from the Republicans. That's what they're doing.
What about issues that you are keeping your eye on? It could be local, state,
Mm-hmm.
federal, a mixture of all three. Is there anything in particular, as far as public policy is concerned, that you just have to keep an eye on this thing?
Well, of course, President Trump ran on, immigration was his number one issue, sealing the border, so mass deportation. So I'm going to be watching that. Now, I'm very comfortable in predicting to you that deportations are not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Just structurally, in addition to the fact you would need to you would need to quadruple the number of immigration agents that work in the U.S. Number one, and number two, you're going to run into all sort of constitutional issues. I mean, you're not. I mean, the American people, yeah, they're unhappy with the immigration situation, but they're not going to be in favor of guys in brown shirts kicking in people's doors in the middle of the night to find immigrants and take them out of the country. That's just not
Mm,
going to happen. That's un-American. That's not the American way. Even the most conservative Republican don't want to see that happen. I do believe that President Trump will go ahead and do his best to seal the border. You can never completely seal the border because there's always going to be ways to get in,
right.
but I do think he'll change that. So anyway, so I'm going to be watching to see exactly how far he goes with that. Of course, he's promised tariffs. I'm a little skeptical that that's going to happen too, because all the economists are basically conservative and liberal economists. Basically, if you put tariffs, uh, uh, you know, um, uh, um, American consumers actually pay for tariffs, not the
Right.
country that's sending
Right.
the country. So it would just spike the cost of cars and other products, and
And
basically
and
everything
so
coming
with
in.
that being said,
So
this could be a big public policy backlash on him. Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then he would pay for it 2 years at the midterms, So when he would, well, he's
Mhm.
probably going to lose the House of Representatives anyway, because that's the historical pattern. The president in power almost always loses the House. So I do believe he's gonna try and push through another set of tax cuts for the wealthy, because
Mhm.
that's his norm. We'll see, because there are some budget hawks in the Senate that say they're not in favor of another set of tax cuts unless they're coupled with cuts in government spending. So we'll see how that goes. On the state level, I'm curious to see if the governor says that he's considering having another constitutional convention, since he couldn't convince. Well, he's asking for another special session to ask for a constitutional convention, since he failed to get one through last time. I just don't think the votes are there for that.
Mhm.
I think the legislature has pressed that. So, of course, we just got through a major tax reform bill. So I think things are going to quiet down on the state legislative front. I think Governor Landry's probably pushed most of the agenda that he's going to be able to get through. Governors tend to do their big things within their first year, because it's sort of their honeymoon period,
Yeah.
and then things kind of calm down after that. So I think he's gonna calm down, just a little bit after this. On the local level, of course, we're at the end of Mayor Cantrell's term, at the very end of their terms. Just, and it's true of any chief executive, president, governor, mayor. Chief executives become lame ducks. Can't get anything done in the last year. So I expect her not to really do very much in her
Mhm.
last few months. And we can see that she's basically been quiet, sort of avoiding the press, anything like this. But as you can see, we've already had a major announcement of Helena Moreno has announced for mayor. I do expect, once we get into the new year, there will be more announcements. Obviously, Councilman Thomas, Senator Duplessis, and there will be more. Historically, whenever you get an open seat, you only get an open seat basically every 8 years, because it's very difficult to knock off an incumbent mayor in New Orleans. It hasn't happened in
Mhm.
over 100 years. So generally speaking, whenever you get an open seat, there's a bunch of people that run and just take their shot. They think, well, I have a free shot.
Mhm.
I'm going to take my shot. So it would not surprise me if we had 10 to 15 major candidates, and I'm not, probably more candidates not, but actually candidates with funding, and that can take their shot in the primary and try and get into the runoff. So I think we will have a robust political year in the city of New Orleans in the year
Mhm.
2025.
So, last question. We got a couple of minutes left. What is the way forward for citizens to, one, learn more about public policy, but then begin to influence public policy?
Well, citizens have to, first of all, everybody has to register to vote and then vote. We have, in our last contested mayor election in New Orleans 8 years ago, the turnout in the primary was like 32%, in the runoff
Mm.
33%. That's unacceptable. That's just unacceptable. So people need to not only register to vote, but they actually need to get out, and they actually need to participate. Um, then, so that's number one. Number two, people need to decide what issues affect them, their lives, their children, their families, and then they can get on the web and they can research those issues and say, how can I get involved in those issues?
Mhm.
Whatever the issue is, you just do a web search, just do a Google search, and there will be an advocacy group that is supporting your issue. There will be an affinity group. You can find a Facebook group and then you should join. And there's power in numbers, so you should join those groups that are that support your causes. That's a way to leverage your strength, because then you're with a group, and that just issues, and those people we'll put you in touch with the appropriate resources, whether it's you want to get involved with a campaign, you want to do public information, you want to go to the legislature and lobby. Just get involved with those groups, and they'll let you know what you need to do to support the causes that are important to you and your children and your spouse and your family.
All right, Dr. Robert Collins. He is a professor of urban studies and public policy at Dillard University. Thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eddie. Always great to see you, man.
Coming up next on the way forward, we are going to see how we can go forward. Is WBOK what New Orleans is talking about? Welcome back to The Way Forward. I'm Eddie Francis. Every afternoon, make sure you join the Reality Check with Gerard Stevens, 1 to 3 p.m. on WBOK. You can also check it out, WBOK1230.com, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. And if you're in New Orleans, 12:30 a.m. is where you can catch the show. Many thanks to Dr. Robert Collins for joining me and coming in to talk about Public Policy 101. If you miss any episode of The Way Forward, then you know what you can do. You can go to Facebook, you can go to YouTube, Twitch, and you can check out past episodes there. But I didn't get a chance to do this last week, and so I'm going to get it started this week, and that is the last segment of this show and the way I want to send you out of here, and that is I want you to go forward. And go forward is going to be any kind of advice, insight, reflection that I can get that can help you do something better tomorrow than you're doing today. Who knows what that is? Knock yourself out. You do what you got to do. All right. But hopefully, what I'm about to share with you is something that is going to help you. I'll put it to you this way. When I read this, it helped me. It helped me a whole lot. And I have to tell you, as somebody, and I'm actually going to dive into this at some point on this show, but I'm 54 years old right now. At the age of 53, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I had been wondering for years, why it was I simply could not get things lined up in my life. And I finally found out. So when I saw this piece, which is 8 Morning Habits of Productive People, then I thought to myself, yeah, I need this. I wonder who else does. So what are these 8 morning habits of productive people according to Global English Editing? Number 1, rise early. Oh, I know, Eddie, I can't stand waking up too early. Well, it is a common trait among productive people according to Global English Editing because, quite simply, people who rise early get an early start on the day. All right, number 2, getting some exercise to kickstart energy. Yes, I am so horrible at this. I promised myself the other morning, I woke up and I'm up early. I'm an early riser. And I was so committed. I was so committed to go and put in the 20 minutes of workout. And I'm on my way to the garage and I passed the garage and I went to go get breakfast. Don't be like me, kids. Get in some exercise to kickstart your energy. Number 3, eat a healthy breakfast. I'm not so bad at this one, actually. Scientific studies have shown that eating a nutritious breakfast can improve concentration and performance at school or at work, wherever it is you are. 4, prioritize your tasks to focus on what's most important. Okay, so I'm really excited I don't know why I'm about to geek out about telling you this, but I actually did an interview not too long ago on a podcast, and I was actually talking about my ADHD. And the host asked me what was the biggest aha moment for me in managing my ADHD. And I kid you not, this really has been a game changer for me, keeping my list of things to do short. Who knew? Well, a lot of people knew, but who knew? And a big part of doing that has been prioritizing the tasks that I want to focus on the most. And now I've melted it down a little bit with a little help, a little discussion. I'm now focusing on my one big goal of the day. But yeah, that is something that you can do to be productive, and you can do it as a morning habit. Prioritize your task and focus on what's most important to you. All right, number 5. Make time for gratitude to acknowledge the good things happening and to set a positive tone. This can be really hard for a lot of people, can't it? Like it really, really can be hard for folks. But yeah, I mean, I know it's cliche, but you woke up this morning and you got off to a start and you were able to have your faculties about you, and so yes, you have another shot to do whatever it is you want to do. 6, avoid digital distractions. Okay, moving on. 7, take time for yourself, such as reading a chapter of a book, meditating, journaling, or simply enjoying a cup of coffee in silence. It is amazing what can happen if you just sit in silence for a little bit. And then finally, 8 morning habits of productive people, according to Global English Editing. Build consistency. Just build some good habits. That is your 8th one. Thank you so much for joining me on The Way Forward. You can check out this episode again on WBOK's Facebook and YouTube accounts, also on Twitch. You can also follow WBOK 1230 on Instagram and TikTok. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to hang out with you on The Way Forward. Use the hashtag The Way Forward WBOK so that you can talk to me and let me know what's on your mind. And share any good news you want to share with me, or send me a suggestion about a show that you really want to hear or an interview you really want to hear so that you can figure out what to do better tomorrow. Remember, you can catch us streaming live, WBOK1230.com and the Play Ode app, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Thank you so much for joining me on The Way Forward. See you next week.